Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Yes, we are back together again as we reflect tonight on the men's only issues for men only issues. Welcome, all Facebook folks, and we will make another provision for Instagram. This topic for tonight for this dialogue is backed by popular demand. It is backed by popular demand. A lot of people, they just couldn't get enough of the discussion that I had with Pastor Olefile Masangane last week, and he will be joining us shortly as we continue to reflect on fathers matter. And tonight we will be focusing on an issue that is very sensitive and important, especially for young men out there. There are many young men out there in our society who find themselves becoming fathers even before they are ready to be fathers. So, how do we deal with those issues as men? How do we deal with those issues as men? So, my brothers, gentlemen, and some ladies, because we heard that there are also ladies who like to join us, and ladies. So, we are here this evening and we will be reflecting on this topic tonight. The film that we will be focusing on is a movie called Family Portrait. Family Portrait is part of a Heartlines anthology of films, 6 films that will be broadcast on SABC2 starting on the 17th of September 2022 from 8:30 p.m. 17th of September, year 22, starting from 8:30. It will be a Saturday p.m. 8:30 p.m. You can watch these movies. There will be a broadcast on SABC2 every Saturday starting from the 17th of September. So don't miss it. Be prepared. You can start now investing in hot chocolate and Milo, whatever. That's your favorite drink. Then popcorn and get your family together. A cup of tea. Have a cup of tea, popcorn or juice, whatever, and watch these movies. And also, what is even more important, there are Bible study guides that go along with these movies. So each movie has some material that you can use to facilitate a discussion in your local church, even in your family, if I may add. If you've got a family, you want to have a guided discussion, you can use these Bible study guidelines. They come with a facilitator instruction, and so you can arrange in your local church to have a discussion either among men only or including women as well. So this is, yes, even though the show is for men only, of course our targets in this show are men, and we are trying to empower men. But the discussion, as you have already seen, you can check all our previous discussions on this YouTube channel. You will notice that the discussions actually benefit everybody. The title, though, is for men only because we want to emphasize the importance for men to get together and talk about these issues. So, my sisters and brothers, yes, we are gathering here again today to talk about Family Portrait, a movie that it's a drama movie that reflects one of the very important issues that affect men, especially young men, that affect young men. And a lot of men, in our society, especially young men, we sometimes we become a little bit careless or reckless. We allow our urges to control us or determine what we need to do, and as a result, along the way, we can end up bringing another human being on this earth while we are not prepared yet to be bringing another human being to this planet called Earth. And when that happens, you find that a lot of men, they struggle dealing with that issue. They struggle, finding their way to of transitioning from being a teenager to becoming a father. All of a sudden now you are a father, and you were still trying to even understand yourself, who you are. Then all of a sudden you are a father. So this movie called Family Portrait by Heartlines. Family Portrait by Heartlines. We want to discuss it just now in a minute with Pastor Olefile Masangane in details, and then also reflect on the issues that the movie highlights for us as men, especially young men out there. We know somebody once said that you can learn from other people's mistakes, and the reason you should be learning from other people's mistakes is so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes that they made. You know, you don't have to repeat the same mistakes that they made. You can just learn from other people's mistakes, because other people's mistakes, they don't have to be your mistakes as well. You can just learn from them. Welcome, Pastor Olefile Masangane. Good evening, sir. Good evening. The last time I saw you, you were traveling. You were on air.
Good evening, Fundis. It's good to join you again this wonderful Monday evening. Looks like we are getting stuck on the evening grind.
Yes. You are back by popular demand.
Thank you, Malusi.
Yeah. I trust that God traveling mercies were with you guys as you were traveling, and we are glad that you made it to the show.
Thank you so much. Now we were in Sabi, engaging with some church leaders there and some business people around this topic of father's matter, but also just around other issues of transformation of our communities.
Yeah.
Just sometimes we need to consider how we can use the resources and the assets that are available, that are at our disposal. Sometimes we overlook the potential and the what do you call it, the skills that are in the room, and we overlook all of those because we are just so spiritual,
Yes.
So it was good for us to just bring things to just normal, to tangible, actionable things that we can do in communities. So setting up these guys, setting them off onto their own peculiar journey to work together as a collective of church leaders, Christian leaders in business. So it was good to be out there.
Oh, very nice, Mfundisi. No, thank you so much. So back to our tonight's topic. We have an anthology of films by Heartlines, and these films, they are highlighting issues that are affecting men out there, especially in particular in relation to fatherhood. And then the first one that we're gonna be discussing tonight is gonna be the Family Portrait, which will premiere on SABC2 on Saturday, the 17th of September 2022 at 8:30 p.m. It features the actors such as Ebenezer Dibakwane, who's playing a character called Aize, who's a struggling artist and who becomes a new father when his girlfriend Nomvula Lebohang got pregnant. Now, my brother, I know last week you mentioned it in passing as we were discussing the other movies last Monday, but today we are going to talk about this particular movie at length and the issues that it highlights, the Family Portrait. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Family Portrait? What is the message that Family Portrait is trying to drive through to the young men out there?
Well, Family Portrait is about, like you have mentioned, Mfundisi, it profiles a young man who wishes to be part of his child's life, a baby girl, and he refuses to sit back and watch this child grow up without his involvement in her life.
Mm-hmm.
This young man is an artist, a fine artist, so he makes a living by selling his portraits.
Mm-hmm.
So and as you can imagine, life is tough for an artist, for a fine artist. Not every time does he make a living out of it, or sell a painting. So that's his primary uh, what do you call it, channel of income, as it were. So this character Aiza goes through the challenge, and there is he has to battle through his girlfriend's mother, who is like, against this young man. He says to him that painting is not going to put food on the table. Your art is not going to put food on the table. They need nappies, they need formula milk, and things like that. Well, we see him in the beginning, just wow, this guy just wanting to even be there at birth, right? So it's an interesting storyline, and interesting as it is, it mirrors society. It mirrors society in that there's many young men out there who find themselves in the situation that Aize is finding himself. We know that unemployment is at a record high, and unemployment among young men is even worse. So, for those who want to be part of their children's lives, they have to jump this hurdle of being able to provide financially. So it challenges a lot of stereotypes about the involvement of a man in a child's life. Is it only financially? Yes, mistakes do happen, and young people will make these mistakes along their lives. But we see a different kind of young man here who is taking full responsibility. So it is quite encouraging, and it's also very challenging. It will rattle your stereotypes, but it is actually a cause for dialogue and conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
we as society have got to ask ourselves the question: to what extent are we willing to journey with young people
Mm.
in these complexities of life? Yes, they've led themselves into those spaces, and so we've got to also help them realize the consequences of their actions. However, are we going to perpetuate the notion that if you don't have the money, you can't be involved in the child's life? So we have got to really think thoroughly and think deeply and interrogate, and don't underplay the issues, but really give ourselves time, because change does take time for this. you know Give ourselves time to really consider some of the damages we might be doing, with all good intentions. But yeah, Family Portrait is about that, Mfundisi. I hope I've summarized what the storyline is about. I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
audience to go and watch the film.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Mfundisi, about that. That's very helpful information, because it's also going to help us to watch this movie even with a more critical eye, and with open minds, and being receptive to learn and grow. So in the movie, you're talking about the fact that the movie is highlighting the challenges that young men face out there. Right before you joined us, I was just mentioning that a lot of young men, they, while they are still transitioning from being teenagers to becoming young adults, they face many challenges, and also go through some weaknesses, such as not being able to control their edges. And then all of a sudden, boom, they end up becoming fathers, or bringing another human being on this planet Earth before they are ready. Now, under normal circumstances, which have become, I must say, very rare. Under normal circumstances, the idea is that you get born, you are a baby, you become a young boy, you grow, you become a teenager. From being a teenager, you become youth, you go to school, university, you get a job, you become a young adult. And then you work, you save money, you fall in love, you engage, and then you get married after paying lobol if you are you believe you come from a culture that subscribe to those requirements. And then you have your own house with the wife, then you start making babies, you grow babies, become adults, right? But that's very rare these days. And I think we must also mention that we are not in any way promoting promiscuity or promoting teenage pregnancies. Not in any way we are saying that is acceptable. But the reality is that there are many young fathers, for the reasons that the Heartlines and the Fathers Matter project and also this show as well, For Men Only, have highlighted in the past. The breakdown on families, young boys growing up without father figures in their life, etc., etc. Now, we are not saying those are excuses, but we are saying those are the causes and realities of these circumstances. Somebody would say, yes, of course, some people, they end up doing these things, even if they come from families where there's a father and a mother. Then there are also other reasons, in peer pressure, influences, etc. Now, this is going to be interesting because it so happened that there is another trending story that was trending on social media recently, and mainstream media, by the way, of one of the celebrities in South Africa who was celebrating his son's birthday. And then he happened to mention the age, and people knew his age. So they started doing the maths, and they were like, hang on, are you trying to tell us that you had your son at the age 14? And when I read the story, I just thought of this movie that Heartlines has put together for us,
Sure.
And he mentioned that fortunately his mother was very helpful in helping him navigate that. Now, coming back to this situation for young men out there, children are not a mistake. There's no human being who is a mistake, but sometimes children can be born out of erroneous decisions, if I may put it like that. So children are not a mistake, but they can be born out of circumstances that were not properly planned for, erroneous decisions. Now, this movie is kind of highlighting that, here is a young man. Now, he has a baby, and usually what happens, and once again, I'm not justifying what young men out there do, but sometimes I think a lot of young men, they struggle with this pressure of now having to be responsible and becoming a father. And then most of the time, because the baby biologically is not really with the father at that time, the baby is with the mother. So it's easier for boys to just run away and not take responsibility.
Absolutely.
But the interesting thing about this movie is that here is a young man who decides that I'm going to take a responsibility for myself. I'm not going to desert my girlfriend or the mother of my child. I have not ticked all the cultural boxes. I have not met all the requirements of becoming a father. However, I'm not going to just desert like most young men will do. And the question I have for you, Muruti, is that yes, the movie highlights this issue and it portrays this young father as as a hero, and the mother-in-law or the grandmother from the maternal side does not have confidence that a young boy and an artist, because usually artist is like being a pastor. Most of the time when you are starting, it doesn't really pay the bills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
remember my grandfather asked me several times, "Are you sure you want to be a pastor?"
Yeah.
But anyway, Moruti, here's the tough question that I'm sure a lot of people out there they are asking themselves this question. There are also cultural nuances in these things. That's number one. Number two,
Yes.
there's also an economic challenge.
Yeah.
Yes, you may be a young man who is not deserting your child, but you want to take responsibility for your child.
Yeah.
But cultural, most African cultures in South Africa will not allow a father of a child because to have access to the child, simply because the father has this young boy has actually defamed the image of the family name.
That's
So
right.
you in isiZulu, that's why there's even what they call intlawulo. The father
Yeah.
will have, in fact, his family will have to come and pay a cow or goat to cleanse the family name, because this is more like a deformation of the family name's character or image. Now,
Yeah.
don't you think there is cultural legitimacy in not allowing young boys to play a role of being fathers without meeting the cultural requirements?
Sure. And again, context matters in this film. That as you will pick up in the film, is actually shot in a metropolitan township. So where there's a melting pot of culture, and you would realize that yeah, whereas these cultural pressures are there, you do find situation whereby the mother does not have adequate family support to can even start the process of going through the intlawulo proceedings. And in the absence of that, the city is just moving at the speed of light. And
Yeah.
things are happening.
Mhm.
Things are happening at the
Yeah.
speed of light.
Mhm.
So you will pick up in this short film that is moving at a very high pace. And when I read the script and looked at how events are just unfolding, it actually mirrored most of our high density townships. Things are happening at the same time, and again, there's a fatherlessness in the girlfriend's home. So there's all those complexities that comes with being in a in an environment such as the one that Unomvula and her I think it's her mother or her grandmother find themselves
Mhm.
in, and as well as Aiz. So things are happening, but the young man, he is desiring to be present to check on the girlfriend and so on. And I've seen these things. So for me, it's like a direct mirror of what I've seen happen in our communities, in our townships. It's happening. But the biggest
Mhm.
question we got to ask ourselves is that uh, you know can 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 young men who have, yes, committed an error,
Mhm. Yeah.
still be actively involved in their children's lives? And
Mhm.
the answer is yes. The question is how what the question is, how much are we willing to make provision for that to take place?
Mm. Mm.
And and find ways to make it more bearable for young people like Aize to jump the cultural barrier or the cultural hurdle, satisfy what culture stipulates.
Yeah.
Look, it differs from culture to culture.
Mm-hmm.
The whole issue of intlaulo. I heard recently that sure, in a Sesotho culture, it's two cows and a
Wow.
horse. Yeah, that's astronomical.
That, yeah,
You
that's
know,
almost like a lobola now.
that's almost like
Yeah. Yeah.
so
On,
some
on,
cultures, yeah,
with all
no,
due respect, with all due respect.
yeah, no, you are Zulu. I
Yeah.
don't understand why you say almost like lobola because two cows is
Mm.
nothing. As
Mm.
from a Zulu perspective. But still, in Tlaulo, two cows, if you think
Yeah.
about it, it's quite
Mm.
astronomical. But that was expected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think culture is dynamic. Culture is, can be adapted from family to family. And, there should be considerations to
Mm-hmm.
say, look at the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, and I think this is me, and this is just me as a young father.
Mm-hmm.
My son is only 14 years old. My daughter
Mm-hmm.
is 8 years old. You know, combined together, I'm a, let's say, for argument's sake, I am what a 20, 22. What was 8? Yeah, well, 22 years old father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's if you put those years together.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that there should be room and provision for families to be careful not to bring
Mm-hmm.
emotions into this whole process.
Yeah.
Anger, resentment, you know,
Mm-hmm.
ukuzonda lo mfana lo. And then
Mm.
this hatred can actually inform a lot and say we're gonna spite this young man. We're gonna make sure that
Or on the other hand, it could have been maybe to be fair on some of the parents and families. In some cultures, these requirements were decided donkey years ago. So they've
yeah,
been just been passed on from one generation to another. And
yeah,
in some families, there might have also been that maybe not so much hatred or resentment, but something along the lines of, we are just, you just brought shame upon us, as a
yes,
family. And
mm,
as a deterrent, even to other young men or women not to engage in sex before marriage. We want to make this stipulation. But as you said, Murudi, it seems like it's not really serving as a deterrent,
yeah,
as much as, because before there can be these there should have been some grooming, mentoring, that has taken place, something that no longer happens. A lot of young boys, they are no longer part of the regiments where they would have been taught what it means to be a man, how to be a responsible man, what stages, how do you do things in stages as you grow as a man,
yeah,
so a lot of men, they grow up with just figuring it out, learning a lot of things from TV, and now it's
yeah,
even worse. They learn things from social media. So
yeah,
we are not, once again, we are not justifying teenage pregnancies and all of that.
yeah,
But there's a lot that needs to be done, which is why, personally, I'm you have a Heartlines Fathers Mental Project has a special place in my heart. It's something
sure,
that I wish I had it when I was younger.
yeah,
Something just to learn so many mistakes I could have avoided if I had learned how to be a man while I was still young. So we have Heartlines and projects such as Fathers Matter that are helping a lot of young people learn what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, etc. Now, here's the thing. Still on the issues of culture, Murutu, you are suggesting something that maybe families need to start reviewing. How do you still hold this young man responsible for his reckless or erroneous sexual behavior, but at the same time, not depriving a child from having access to his or her father, or denying the father having access to his child. Because, as you mentioned in one of our previous discussion, that even scientifically, it is extremely important, which, interestingly, is one of the reasons why we should be having children before we are ready to be fathers. That you mentioned that that 1,000 days are extremely important for the father to be there for the child. And also, even beyond that, raising your child with the mother, God had designed it to happen in that way, that the father and the mother will raise their children. But as the situation it is, it doesn't seem like that is happening. So, Murutin, can you say a little bit more and maybe perhaps elaborate about how can we navigate cultural requirements without compromising the cultural requirements per se, but at the same time not denying the young fathers access to their children, or the children, or depriving children access to their fathers? So before you respond, Murut, I know you said the movie is set in an urban context, but I kind of think some of these cultural requirements, they cut across whether we are in a rural area or urban.
Absolutely, because we're a global village, and whatever happens in urban context, I mean, television and mass media has made it such that we don't, the lines are blurred between urban and rural. So the lines are pretty much blurred. When I go to Engwavuma, I see the very same kind of practices that I see in Soweto. So you are quite spot on there. And I think, just going back to my point earlier, is that the first thing is for families to check their hearts. Check your heart. And the number one determinant here is this big question. How is this benefiting the child? How will this benefit this child? Because the decision we make as families, and as we say, it takes a village to raise a child, right? We are all responsible for this life. So we can actually set this child on an upward trajectory in life or a downward one. So if we hold fast because culture dictates for us to do so, and mind you, culture is not wrong. The problem is that culture is at the mercy of people's interpretation. You are a man of the cloth. You use this beautiful book called the Bible. It's the same thing. The Bible is a book that is full of narratives. 75% of it is narrative. Okay? 15% of it is poems, and only 10% instructions. So as you read the stories in the Bible, you have such a huge responsibility to interpret and to be careful how those scriptures are interpreted to your listeners. So culture also can be interpreted differently for different people. Like, take for instance, Ilobolo. I've been to different Ilobolo negotiations. It's different for every context I find myself in, which then assets my position that your interpretation of these cultural practices can either set the child on an upward trajectory or a downward one. So we have got to check ourselves and check our hearts whenever we are sitting at these negotiation tables. and say, how will this benefit the child? Are we going to be steadfast? Everything is cast in concrete, lento yenziwa kanje, and asukwazi ukuthi, make concessions because of isimo, because of this particular condition. But we have got to be willing to go down that route. We have got to be willing. If we're not willing, unfortunately, we're gonna break ourselves against the code of the law of culture.
And the cycle is gonna continue repeating itself.
The cycle will continue repeating itself.
Because that's my other challenge, that as much as we have tried to stick to the cultural requirements, etc., but it doesn't seem to serve as a deterrent, and the culture keeps on repeating itself. We have seen situations where the child, where the grandmother was born out of a wedlock, the mother born out of a wedlock, and and now the granddaughter is the one now who's giving birth to a child out of a wedlock as well. So it just keeps on repeating itself. And the same will happen with men as well, where you find boys that are grandchildren, they are sons of a father who was born out of a wedlock, and the father himself was born out of a wedlock. So it seems like at some point we kind of lost it. And one of the ways that we are not saying it's the perfect one, we can try to fix this issue is by one, teaching boys to be more responsible and not make babies before they are ready to be fathers. And number two, if it so happen, maybe instead of making the situation worse, but the two families, because that's another thing that we shouldn't overlook it, that there are two families involved here. Yes, we do understand that on a few occasions there are young boys that do not have supportive families, boys who are basically on their own, especially children of Generation X, or those who are from the 80s, some of these children, they are just on their own, so they don't have a lot of family support. But we as a community, as churches, which brings me now to another issue, because I want to throw a spanner into this whole thing before we close. I want to bring the issue of religion, mainly Christianity, because in all spectrums, whether you are born again, Pentecostal, charismatic, mainline, established, it doesn't matter. We have covered the culture part, so we agree that families, they need to come together and agree how they can facilitate the raising of this child without necessarily letting the boy, who is now a father, getting away with the taking responsibility. Now, here's the issue. Now, in the context of the church, religion, now because I'm a Christian, I'm gonna focus a little bit more on the issue of Christianity. I would love to know how our brothers and sisters in the Islamic religion, how they handle these issues. But in the Christian church, usually we are then you get your membership is suspended. We are made to sit at the back, and most of the time, there is the woman who gets suspended and made to sit at the back. The boy continues with his life as normal. Second, in the charismatic and Pentecostal churches, there's something that they do which I kind of, to a certain extent, I appreciate and I think is good, where both the boy and the girl, they are brought before the church, and the church is informed that Brother Tulani and Sister Thelma, they have fell into the devil's snare. They fell into a trap. They committed the sin, and as a result, this now they are expecting. So they are suspended from maybe church choir or other responsibilities in the church, which is in a way a good thing, because you have to show that they have done something that was a little bit irresponsible. So they are not being kicked out of the church, but they are just being given time to process this, which also maybe we should have this discussion some other time, because there's another element we need at some point to talk about, the issue of how the young teenage person who is gonna be a mother, and this teenage boy is gonna be a father. How do they process their loss of youth? Because how do they process their loss of youth? Because in my situation, that's what I found extremely overwhelming. I just didn't know what to do. So I didn't know what to do. So I just took flight.
Sure.
Fortunately, families were gracious enough, to rein me in, So and it all turned out okay. But how do we help this young boy who's now going to be a father process that loss of teenage hood and youthfulness and the girl? But maybe we can discuss that next Monday. But for now, I need to pick your brains on how does a church, this process of a church now, because now you have a church, you have a culture, there are family cultural requirements. Now there is also a church requirements. Well, what is your take on that? The church requirements.
Yeah, I think you've already touched on some key points there that churches could actually start reflecting on, to say, is this helpful in terms of excommunicating and uksika umuntu? And in some churches, as you say, it's only the girl who gets excommunicated. The young man carries on with life as normal. In some contexts, both of them gets excommunicated. And I think the church is denying itself an opportunity there to help people rebuild their lives. And like you've just shared a very powerful experience there about like taking flight and and really just struggling to deal with it, and then only your family stepped in to sort of like rein you in and say, hey, it's going to be okay, you're going to be fine. So church folk can actually play that role as well, because of fatherlessness and because of lots of and I mean we are there now where many young people are coming even from child-headed households, and they are growing up as adults, and they have never had any adult or parent in their lives. So the church and the elders in the church could actually step in there while you are showing them the errors of their ways. Father them to restoration, father them to healing. As I've mentioned, church, the networks such as churches can be a supportive network where people can deal with their own father wound. Okay, so it's a very powerful time for us not to keep quiet, for us to spend more time and check in with these young people and say, hey, how are you doing? And begin to journey with them. And it's not, let's be careful that we don't become harsh on those whose sin has been visible because of pregnancy. There are many others whose errors have not resulted in any pregnancy, and they're carrying on with their lives as if okay, that's fine, it's normal and it's acceptable. Only feel guilty when the baby is conceived. I think we need to reflect deeply as a church. We say, well, these things, Jesus says, out of the abundance of the hearts, the mouth will speak. And so we journey inwardly and interrogate ourselves and actually reflect deeply. Before I even cast a judgment on the other, I must actually look internally. Jesus says, "Watch that you don't spot a speck in your neighbor's eye, while you yourself, your vision is obstructed by this big log." So I have to be careful that I do not judge too harshly those whose sins and errors have been what do you call it, made manifest via pregnancy.
Yeah.
I have to be careful about that. But I think, in a nutshell, the church can play a role of journeying with. It's life on life, in Fundis.
Yes.
Life on
Yeah.
life. You cannot do it any other way. You actually, John C. Maxwell says, you teach what you know, but you multiply who you are. So it is about, one of the things that I've actually learned in most recently, when I was like worried my son is going to repeat this grade, how do I deal with it? And one gentleman said to me, Olefile, you talk to your son about your own failures. So those church folk have an opportunity to share their own failures with these young people who have fallen. I hope it makes sense.
And help them grow.
Yes.
As we conclude this matter, I want us to mention that to all young men out there, that as you are growing up to become a man, first of all, because I know there's quite a lot of challenges out there, peer pressure from and also social media, that your manhood is not determined by living promiscuous lifestyles, and it's very dangerous. In fact, besides, putting yourself in a position where you can end up being a father before you are ready to be a father, because being a father is a huge responsibility. And maybe to see some people who have been able to redeem themselves, but it's a huge responsibility. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of emotional strength, mental, and so as a young boy, as a boy out there, you are still in school. Focus on your studies. Focus on your studies, and learn from the mistakes of those who have come before you. Don't repeat the same mistakes. I know some people might make it look cool. It's not cool. It's better to do everything on time. It's important that you finish school. Either you go to university and get a job, or you start your own business. You create some resources, because think about this. What you yourself as a young boy, think about the things that you would love to have right now that you don't have. So you would rather have those resources before you bring a child, so that your child does not have to go through the same challenges that you have. It's even worse if you come from a poor background. Maybe you grew up without a father. We want to encourage all young boys out there. Listen to your parents. Listen to your parents. Don't say why. Don't ask why. Don't say, but daddy, you made the same mistake, or mama, you also made the same mistake, because there might be circumstances and reasons that they cannot be able to explain to you. And because you're still young to hear, or maybe they don't want to turn you against maybe your father to develop a better relationship. So there are things that sometimes you may be raised by a single mother. They may not tell you while you are young. So young boys, listen to us. Since Badala Maja, we are so we are not imposing ourselves to you. We are not saying we were perfect. We were not perfect, but what we are saying, you don't learn from our mistakes. You don't have to repeat our mistakes. You just learn and do better. Just do better. Change the narrative. But in the event you happen to maybe to fall into the trap, and then you find yourself becoming a father before you are properly ready, we are just saying to all young men, watch Portrait movie on the 17th of September at 8:30. Learn from the character there, the character there by the name of Aize. learn and see what challenges. Because sometimes movies, they're like novels, they're like books. They can teach you, so you can learn some things. We are saying to parents out there, if it so happens that your children, they end up bringing another child to this world, be supportive to your children. We are not saying don't hold them responsible. Hold them responsible, because that's the only way they can learn and grow. You can't be a parent and not learn how to be held responsible for your life. But as you do that, don't do it in such a manner that it repeats the cycle. It continues to cause more damage as we move forward. The innocent child needs to be parented, and the best way is for two parents to find a way of co-parenting with the assistance from their families, so that the child does not grow up with what the scholars and the researchers are now calling the father wound and the mother wound. We want children who are growing up healed. And also, I think I need to mention this. It's not because I'm a pastor. This people can do this irrespective of which religion you are. You could be Muslim, you could be a Shamba, it doesn't matter. I think it's going to be important that everybody needs to understand that if you are a Christian, you're going to need the church to help you raise your child. The saying that says a child is raised by a village, that village includes a church. And I'm talking about churches that have children ministries. The children, they're going to need to be brought to church, so that the church can help the families raise the children in the ways as the Bible says, when they grow up, they will remember, not deviate from them. There are things that children's ministry, youth ministries in churches, they can help children become better people. You know, recently I just met some of my colleagues in another event. I used to be in the youth ministry with them. And it got me thinking, you know, that almost all of us from that youth ministry, with an exception of those who have died, you know, over the years, but we all have turned out to be responsible people, you know, even those of us, you know, who were all over the place, you know, during adolescent stage. But that youth ministry, it kind of, you know, brought us back in line. It reined us in without, you know, imposing and being draconian. So when I say the church can help families raise their children, I'm talking from experience. And so you bring your children to children's ministry. Some people call it Sunday school, youth ministries, and there are programs like Heartlines. You know, tap into them and let all of us, you know, help you. Now we even have this program called For Men Only. We can help you with your boys, because this program is focusing on boys, or on men only, not females. So we can help you also, you know, enlighten and inspire and encourage young boys out there to grow up to be good men. I don't know if you have any last comments before we talk about your next movie that we'll be discussing next week.
No, I have nothing to add but to say, join us in the campaign. Join us in this amazing campaign, and I hope you will connect on the 17th of September and watch the Family Portrait. This is going to really move you, and you're gonna find it very interesting. Thank you so much, Mfundisi, for having me online.
No, Mfundisi, you are most welcome. Thank you so much. So 17th September, the first movie to be aired on SABC2 will be Family Portrait, which focuses on young parents, mainly a young father who's trying to be a father even though he didn't even have a job, etc., etc. As it's been explained, you can read more about it online. Go to Heartlines website. You will find more details about this movie. Next week, Monday, Muruti, we will be discussing the second movie, and the second movie will be called In Time. Am I right? It's going to be called In Time. Can you share us a little bit more about this, just as a teaser, what we will be talking about next week, Monday?
Well, here we're talking about the voice of the father, the importance of the voice of the father in the life of their children. It's amazing just how this movie profiles that and shows you, yo, my words to my children are much more, they carry a lot of weight. So it's very important for us as fathers to speak positive words, to build positive mental attitude in our children's lives. So that's what we're talking about.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Mfundisi. So, gentlemen and ladies, I know there are ladies out there. So join us again next week, Monday, 7:30. Apologies, the poster said 7 o'clock. That was a typo from our side. It's going to be 7:30, 7:30 to 8:30 next week, Monday. We'll be focusing on in time. We'll be dealing with the issues of fathers who work away, absent fathers, etc. All those issues that come with fathers working away. And the good thing about these movies, and I encourage everyone once again, please buy popcorn, invest in hot chocolates, your coffees and teas, and please diarize these days, because these movies are showing that it's possible to be good and responsible fathers, irrespective of the challenges that sometimes fathers face up there. So thank you so much, Pastor Olefile Masangane from Fathers Matter Project of Heartlines, and thank you so much everyone who joined us this evening. We'll see each other again next week Monday at 7:30. Next week Monday at 7:30 from Umalusi for Men Only Show. God bless you. God is good all the time and all the time. God is good. See you next week. Thank you,
Good night.
sir.
Cheers.
Good
Bless
night.
you. Bye.
Yes, bye.